Welcome back to Believers IAS Academy. In this today's topic of the day discussion, we will be discussing about the recently released crime report data by the NCRB for the year 2023. We will try and understand the changing patterns of how crimes are being reported in India, and also we will try and do some analysis from the means point of view, and in the end we will also solve one prelims question. So let's begin. So as we discussed, so the reason why we are studying this is pertaining to the recent release of the data or the report for the year 2023 by the National Crime Records Bureau, which is like an agency which keeps the repository or data of all the offenses or the crime rates in the country, right? So what does the 2023 data says with respect to crimes in India? It says that India has witnessed a rise of 7.2 percentage in total registered crimes compared to 2022. Of course, a lot of factors matter as to why the reporting has increased. So this essentially doesn't mean that the crime rates have just increased, but also there's another factor that the very nature of reporting or going to the police has also increased. The behavioral change has also been, the change in the behavior of the people or the behavioral change that is mostly required, especially in addressing or in bringing these kind of issues to the police is also important, and this was one of the biggest factor that lacked in India from a very long period of time. So now the rise in the reporting of the cases or the number of cases clearly shows that the reporting of the cases also has increased, which is also on the other side kind of positive, also negative because of the crime rates which have increased. So I think it is pretty well clear here. It is positive because the reporting habit or the behavioral change has been witnessed amongst the people, because now they are morely, or let's say most proactive in terms of identifying the crime, going to the police. And also on the other hand, the crime rates also have increased, which is also problematic. So let's try and understand this critical understanding. So if we have to see the reports data or the status, we'll have to try and understand by going through the nook and corners. So we will first do the highlights of the report, right, and then we will get into the analysis. So if we see the overall crime rates for the year, in fact this is pretty much the comparison between the year 2022 and 2023. So the overall crime rates have seen a 7.2 increase, and this is with respect to 2023, and the cases that we are talking about is 6.24 million cases, of which the increase in terms of population earlier, which was affecting, or let's say which had about 422.2 per lakh population, so now the crime rate has increased for 448.3 per lakh population. And if you have to see the frequency of the crime rates in India, it is said that every 5 seconds, right, one crime gets recorded in every 5 seconds, and this is on the negative connotation. And also apart from that, we should even try and see the changing pattern that compared to the previous data, we have seen a decline in the traditional violent cases like rape, dowry and deaths. And on the other hand, we have seen an increase in certain cases pertaining to cybercrime and also urban crimes. And specifically talking about the cybercrimes, we have seen an increase of 31.2 percentage, mostly which are fraud related, and this also is an indication of the poor and the inadequate cyber hygiene of the country amidst the rapid digitalization act, and also alongside the rapid growth of AI and also let's say the digital development, correct? And moving forward, talking about few more important things, we have few more data that the report gives us. One is with respect to metropolitan cities. We can see that the crime rates have increased by 10.6 percentage, of which Delhi has reported the highest number. And in terms of crime rate against the women, even this also has increased, not considerably, but a small increase of 0.7 percentage. And of course, mostly pertaining to the domestic cruelty, which remains at top by having 29.8 percentage of weightage. And in terms of the state, Uttar Pradesh currently stands at top one for the crime against women. And next, moving on to the crimes against the reserved category or the weaker sections of the community, the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe. We have seen a marginal rise in the crimes against scheduled caste, but on the other hand, the crimes against the scheduled tribes, we have seen a drastic increase of 28.8 percentage, and this mostly pertaining to ethnic conflict, which obviously everybody have heard of, the case that was happening around in Manipur, right? And talking about the crimes against children, we have seen an increase of 9.2 percentage, and mostly under the POCSO Act. This is also very alarming and very concerning. So now all these data, these are like a mirror that reflects how socio-economic, or let's say socio-cultural development of a country is. Correct? And this is the reflection of the country in terms of socio-cultural development, which pretty much directly is linked to the country's socio-economic development. Because if the country has to have more foreign direct investments, or let's say if the country has to talk about development, or let's say even for that matter growth and development are two different distinct terms. So growth is unidirectional, or development on the other hand is multidirectional, right? So development of a particular country, especially India, if we have to keep it in mind, India has to see development not just in terms of GDP, or not just in terms of multiplying or increasing the farmers' income, but also should ensure the socio-cultural development of the country by addressing these things. In fact, it starts from this particular stage by addressing the crime against women, children, the weaker sections, and what are the actions the government is taking. So once if the socio-cultural development or social cultural aspect has a safety net from the government, should the government be able to plan accordingly for the socio-economic development, right? Because now if a foreign company has to come and invest in India, obviously it is the ease of doing business, and it is about how conducive the policy rates, the tax rates are, right? All of those things. And also with that is with respect to how the people or the culture of the India is, right? So that is also one of the important dimension which often gets neglected, and this is a clear indication of the India's representation in terms of how it is performing in terms of the socio-cultural development of its own people. Correct? And this also talks about the bottlenecks or the shortcomings of the implementing agencies, especially the police. Right? We will talk about all the reforms going forward. Even before that, let's simply briefly try and understand what NCRB is. So it was established in the year 1986 based on the recommendations of the Tandon Committee. This is important from the examination point of view, because from prelims mostly the questions, at least so far, they have been asking if they have to ask from this particular topic. Generally, they pick a statement from any of these important reports or the highlights of the reports, and then they club it with the static, and mostly they tend to ask the establishment, as in it was established in this particular year and which committee, right? So this is the reason why we have to go through this as well. So about the NCRB 1986 and which committee, Tandon Committee, right? And also the National Police Commission, and also the Ministry of Home Affairs Task Force, right? It was built on the recommendations of all these three important agencies, and this comes under the Ministry of Home Affairs. And what are the functions? As we discussed, it is like an agency which acts as a repository of crime and criminal data for the country, and it helps the country to coordinate its crime and criminal tracking processes, and also enabling the network and systems, right? It is also called as CCTNS, and it publishes national reports like what we are studying right now, and the crime rate in India, accidental deaths, suicides, and prison status. Recently, we've made a video on the NCRB data or the report pertaining to the accidental deaths and suicides. Please do check it out. Yes. Now coming to the main aspect, the analysis, right? So this analysis mostly is for the mains examination. So now what have we seen, or what are the key takeaways from the report is these four important things. One is the changing nature of crime, correct? So the kind of crime that is evolving over the period of time with the change of demographics, with the change of the politics, right? With the change of technologies, right? The crime is also evolving. So India's crime profile is shifting from a traditional to a modern form, As we discussed, we have seen the reduction in certain age-old cases like dowry, right, rape, right, all those cases we have seen a reduction in comparison to those cases which are modern in nature. For example, anything and everything related to cyber, cyber security, right, data leakage, all of those things, especially cybercrime, financial frauds becoming dominant. And this pretty much, what is the indication? It indicates that digital vulnerability is pretty much increasing amid the expanding internet access and inadequate awareness. Means the country is striving towards development, and development obviously means that the institutions responsible to take care of development should also grow, and institutions pertaining to the infrastructure of the particular country, let's say increasing the internet access, or creating more conducive environment, or let's say more better ecosystems, because it to make it more conducive for the companies, right, the companies, and in fact the factories, whatever, right. So internet access is very important. And with this, the other offset or other important aspect is the inadequate awareness amongst the people, right. So how easy this internet access has become, it is equally easy for them to get or to become more vulnerable for certain frauds or certain crimes related to this particular internet. So this is one thing which is very important. So we have to talk about how this digital vulnerability can be addressed, right. And also we have to think about, or the policies that should be framed to create awareness, to make sure people don't fall prey to any of these kind of crimes related to cyber, right. Next is with respect to urbanization and policing. One is the rising crime rates, especially we have seen in the metro cities, point to urban stress, because the crime rates compared to the rural versus urban, we have seen an increase of crime rates in the urban, right, especially in the metropolitan cities. So this points out to the urban stress, population density, and improved reporting mechanisms, as we discussed in the very beginning, because more and more number of people have been shifting to the urban cities, right, tier 1, tier 2 cities. So now they become more vulnerable for let's say to fall prey for all these crimes or any crimes that happens. In fact, the more number of people are in the urban cities, so of course we have this urban stress thing which makes them more vulnerable, and also due to the population density. And even this also has improved the reporting mechanisms also. Everybody with a smartphone has now become reporters, right, who report themselves. Of course, that reporting in social media is absolutely different from reporting in a police station. Of course, here when we say improved reporting mechanism, we are talking about reportings which have increased amongst the police stations, right. So this also reflects a smart policing, because smart policing here means there's something called as janasnehi, means people friendly policing is one thing that the present policing system is trying to inculcate. But still there are few shortcomings even in this as well. Even till date, a lot of people get scared even listening to the word police station. Even if they go to the police station, the atmosphere is not comfortable for them, that they are willing to talk their problems openly. So hence reforms has to be brought in, especially to increase smart policing. And smart policing not just means people friendly, it's a very open-ended term. This also includes the integration of technology, especially the AI, right, how technology can be infused in the age-old practices, which makes policing even more easier, right. And even smart policing also includes taking imply, or let's say taking ideas from other countries where best policing practices have been have stood out. So those kind of models can be inculcated, right. So smart policing is a very open-ended term which includes everything. So, and also it includes CCTV surveillance and citizen police partnerships, right. Part is it's part and parcel of people friendly policing, right. So this is with respect to urbanization and policing. And talking about the gender and social justice concerns, we have seen that the crime against women, children, SC and STs still continue even till date, exposing deep-rooted social inequalities and patriarchal mindset. So this is also one of the takeaway. And what is the a possible outcome for this or possible way forward for this. Implementation gaps persist despite strong legal frameworks like POXO, SCST prevention. Means the near or the best way forward for this situation is to make sure that to implement all these policies which are already there in a more efficient manner, right? POXO is there, SEST prevention of atrocity act is also there. So how well is this getting implemented, right? So proper implementation has to be there, and there has to be a mechanism where we can create a checks and balances system where it is assured that whatever or whosoever goes to the police or any authority to report a particular crime is being addressed properly. So there has to be a check and balance. Of course, in the recent policing that we discussed, policing also, the police department also has a customer care kind of a department separately, a customer care team of the polices, where the moment you enter a police station for anything, the moment you register yourself in the station there with the station HO, after you return back home, a call will be given to you, right? You will receive a call, the person will receive a call from the police department, from the customer care unit of the police department, asking for a feedback whether the SHO addressed your query or not. Was there any problem, right? So now this is also very good in terms of how it is trying to create the checks and balances system. But once again, it boils down to the implementation, right? Implementation and making sure that the most suffered section of the society, especially women, children, SCSTs, also they are the most vulnerable, that the implementation works better for these communities. Then is the governance and the technology gaps. So we have seen sharp rise in cyber frauds, and this calls for more stringent data protection laws, cyber awareness programs. Even this pertains to small children, even families, and even huge corporates also, because cyber attacks, or let's say cyber crime, we are not we cannot say that only one particular section is prone to it or vulnerable to it. Cyber create or awareness has to be created in almost all the sections, starting from the small kids even to the households, and even they should go expand itself to the governments and even the corporates also, right? So hence this sharp rise in cyber frauds is a wake up call to the government to make sure to create more data protection laws, more stringent ones which clearly delineates the punishments, etc., everything related to that. And then cyber awareness programs and capacity building in digital forensics, and also police modernization and interstate coordination also remains weak. So this is also another wake up call to the government, right? So this is pretty much with respect to the analysis. So now what is the analysis? So now whatever we discussed is something that you can take away from this report, which you might probably can use this in essay or even your answer writing, right? So that is the analysis part. So now what is the way forward? Very simple: strengthen cyber crime units, integrate artificial intelligence and surveillance. Next is bring in more police reforms, fill in all the gaps that police stations have, like let's say improving the staffing, the training, the forensic infrastructure, and then legal literacy and social campaigns to curb gender and caste based violence, as in more awareness should be created in terms of creating or bringing up more social campaigns, right? And also developing legal literacy amongst the people to talk about how bad caste biased violences are even in this present generation, and then promote community policing and public participation for early reporting. This also we discussed. And then also another important thing is regular auditing of digital and urban security systems under smart cities motion. This is pretty much to create the checks and balances system also, right? So this is sufficient from this particular report. So as we have discussed this particular report, we have discussed from both the prelims point of view and also from the mains point of view, and this is exactly how one aspirant must look forward to study or analyze any current affairs, especially which would help them for their prelims and also their mains examination. So now, even before we end the video, let's do one prelims question. Consider the following statements regarding the National Crime Records Bureau. Of course, it's a very direct question. It was established in 1986 under the Ministry of Home Affairs. It manages crime and crime tracking network systems, CC and TNS. It publishes only 2 annual reports: Crime in India, Accidental Deaths and Suicides in India. Which of the statements given above are correct? Use the comment section, leave your answers below. Anyway, that's all for this particular video. Signing off, this is Madan Gopal. Have a beautiful day.